Today I'm going to do the part 3 of the series that I started earlier. Here when we talked, we had created a persistent volume and a PVC, which is a ticket to a part of the disk that we're going to now mount onto a pod. So let's refresh our memory and let's look at the requirements. Last requirement is to mount that particular PVC into a particular place using an image out of nginx Alpine. So first, let's get the YAML file for a simple nginx, pardon me, nginx pod. So let's do krun -h for help. That gives a whole bunch of examples. We will just create the first one. And instead of creating the actual pod, we're just going to create the YAML file by doing something like we've covered that in other videos. If we do this part, dry run equals client minus o YAML, it doesn't get created. Instead, it gives you a YAML file. So let's save that file into an YAML file, and let's see, and let's cat our requirements. Actually, we kind of know the requirements already. So let's look at the file. The first thing we have to do is get the pod to mount the volume, right? So to do that, what I need to do is go back to our documentation and look at the pod and actually volume. And it gives me examples of how I can do that, right? So let's look at that. Background, volume. That's not a good example in our case. Let's see if we can find another good one. There's volume ID. No, we're not doing that. We're not mounting config map. We're not doing empty directory. Let's look up and see if we missed a good example. Pod test volume, no volume ID. That's no bueno. Let's keep looking. Not that either. We're not using EST4. We're not doing config map. Volumes, cache volume. That's not empty directory, but maybe we'll have to settle for that. Let me see, going back down, persistent disk, GCE. We're not doing GCE. This is way too complicated for our need. Now it's getting really path, host path. That's host path, test volume. No, that's not it. All right, let's go back down. iSCSI, local. That is way too complicated for our need. All right, so we'll have to do this on our own. Like I said, the documentation for this topic of persistent volume is really not good. All right, so let's see. Let's look at an example. So I'll leave the example in the description so you can find it. So I have examples from my previous practices that we can use for. It's really simple actually at the end of the day. So let's do pod with PVC volume. So what has to happen is the pod is going to mount a volume like this. And then the container is going to mount the same thing on inside it. So let's see if we can do the pod first. Claim volume PVC. Okay, let's do that. c.yaml. And under the pod section, we will add this. And name would be PV foo-volume. Persistent volume. We know the name of persistent volume, which is foo-PVC. Let's see if that works. Let's apply that and see if that does anything for us. Okay, that worked. So I still have to do a second part of the third part. So I will see you in part 4 of this series where I do the rest of it. I will see you next time.